How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, May 1st, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to preview the conference semifinal round of this 2022 NBA playoff round, as there are now 8 teams left out of the original 30 that are competing for the 2022 NBA Finals, and also every single team that went into the first round that held the home court advantage were all the teams that advanced to this next round, so it's very impressive for all of these teams to, of course, make it here. And in previewing what's going to be this round, I'm going to review what got all of these teams here in the first place. So, of course, I do want to congratulate all these teams for making it here. I'm going to look first at the first series that's going to be taking place, as the first 2 games are going to be taking place today, and the next 2 game ones are going to be starting tomorrow. The first of all 4 of these matchups is going to be taking place at 1 o'clock on ABC today, as game 1 between the 2 and 3 seeds in the Eastern Conference will see the Boston Celtics host the Milwaukee Bucks. The Celtics have home court advantage in the 7-game series. Games 1 and 2 should be in Boston, game 1 today and game 2 on Tuesday. Games 3 and 4 should be in Milwaukee on the 7th, which is next Saturday. Next upcoming Saturday. And then, of course, it'll be on the 9th, which will be next Monday. Taking a look first at how the 2-seed Celtics were able to make it to this round. They made it to the first round after sweeping the 7-seed Brooklyn Nets after the Brooklyn Nets won their lone play-in game. They would go on to win the first game at home by 4. They won their second game in Boston by 7. They would win game 3 in Brooklyn by 6. And then they would go on to win game 4 in Brooklyn by 4 points. As within this entire series, they would be led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard out of Duke, Jason Tatum. The 23-year-old would average nearly 30 points a game, 4.5 rebounds, 7.3 assists, almost 2 steals, and almost a block per game. Jaylen Brown, their shooting guard, would average 22.5 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2.5 steals. Marcus Smart would go on to average 16.5 points and 7 rebounds. Al Horford averaged 13 points, 7.5 rebounds as well. And Grant Williams would be the 5th player on the Celtics who averaged double-digit points, as he averaged 11 points within that series to help them make it through. And then taking a look at the other team, their opponent that they're going to face, the defending champs Milwaukee Bucks, would face off against the 6-seed Chicago Bulls. They would win their first game in Milwaukee by 7. Chicago would end up winning game 2 by 4, and then the Bucks would go on to win the next 3. They won game 3 in Chicago by 30. They will win game 4 in Chicago by 24. They will win game 5 in front of their hometown fans by 16, as Giannis would go on to lead all 3 of the 5 games in scoring. This team would go on to be led in scoring by Giannis Antetokounmpo, as he would go on to average 28 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, and a block and a half in those 5 games. Their second leading scorer for the series was Jrue Holiday, as he averaged 16 points, 5 rebounds, and about 7 assists in all 5 games. Brook Lopez would average 13 points as a starter. Grayson Allen out of Duke would average 13 points off the bench. And then Bobby Portis would go on to average 11 points and 11 rebounds in this series as well. Chris Middleton would go on to average 14 points, as he went on to start only 2 of the games that he played, but he was still a very big part of this team, as the Bucks had 6 double-digit scorers in the series to make it through. And, of course, this is going to be a highly anticipated matchup, as I imagine between these two teams, the Boston Celtics are going to be the team to make it through, because I do truly believe in this team this year. But it'll be very interesting to see how this series unfolds. Looking at the second game, one that is going to be taking place today, it'll be the 2-3 matchup in the Western Conference, as the 2-seed Memphis Grizzlies are going to host the Golden State Warriors. And this, of course, coming off of a season in which the Memphis Grizzlies would finish with 3 more wins than the Golden State Warriors anyway. Looking first at how the Memphis Grizzlies were able to make it into this round. They were able to beat the 7-seed Minnesota Timberwolves in that first round in 6 games. They would go on to lose their first game. Minnesota won game 1 by 13 in Memphis. Memphis would win game 2 in Memphis by 28 points. Game 3 would see Memphis take the series lead, beating Minnesota by 9 in Minneapolis. Minnesota would even the series in game 4 off of a 1-point win. Game 5 would see the Grizzlies win by 2 to take the series lead, and then they would go on to beat the Timberwolves in 8 to officially clinch their berth into the next round. In this particular series, they would go on on to be led in scoring by Desmond Bane, who averaged 23 points and 4 rebounds in all 6 of the games he played. Their elite starting point guard, John Morant, averaged 21.5 points, nearly 9 rebounds, more than 10 assists and a steal and a half in the 6 games he played. Dylan Brooks out of Oregon and Brandon Clark out of Gonzaga would each average 16.5 points. Clark averaged 9 rebounds alongside his and even a block. And then their fifth leading scorer, their fifth player who would average double-digit points, would be their power forward, Jaren Jackson Jr. out of Michigan State. He averaged 11 points, 7 rebounds, and nearly 3 blocks a game, as he was a big part in helping the Grizzlies make it through. And then taking a look at how their opponents were able to make it here, the Golden State Warriors ended up beating the 6th seed Denver Nuggets in 5. They won their first 3 games of the series. They won their first 2 games in San Francisco by 16 and 20 respectively. They won game 3 in Denver by 5. They would lose game 4 in Denver as the Nuggets won that game by 5 to avoid the sweep. The Nuggets would, of course, opt for the gentleman's sweep, beating the Nuggets in 4 in Game 5. In this particular series, they were led in scoring by their goated starting point guard, the NBA's all-time leader in three-pointers. As Stephen Curry only started 1 of the 5 games he played in this series, he would average 28 points, 5 assists, and about just over a steal a game while he was shooting 40% from 3. Their second leading scorer was their elite starting shooting guard, who's done this before, Klay Thompson, as he averaged 22.6 points. He also averaged 4 rebounds, just over an assist and just over a steal per game. Jordan Poole will be their third leading scorer, as he averaged 21 points and 5 assists and just over a steal, as the Warriors had 3 players who averaged 20 points in those 5 games. Andrew Wiggins, their all-star, would go on to average 14 points, and Draymond Green would almost average double digits himself, as the Warriors had 4 double-digit scores, 3 of them averaging 20, as they were able to inflict their will on the Denver Nuggets. I think as this series is going to lay out, I think because the Warriors have more playoff experience, I think that they should be able to beat the Memphis Grizzlies. But of course, congratulations to both those teams. And this is one of those things I really can't call in the moment. But of course, congratulations to this team for at least getting themselves all the way there. But in addition, so those are going to be the 2 matchups that are going to be taking place today, as the Grizzlies host the Golden State Warriors for the first 2 games of the series. Game 1 will be today. Game 2 is supposed to be set for Tuesday. Game 3 in San Francisco is set for next Saturday. And then Game 4 is going to be set for the 9th, which is next Monday. So, and those are at least the 4 games that we know of. And if they do force any other games, we'll see 5, 6, and 7. 2 of those games, the Grizzlies are going to host them. So now those are the 2 matchups that are going to be taking place today. Taking a look at the 2 second-round matchups that are going to be taking place tomorrow. The first game 1 will be the 1-4 matchup in the Eastern Conference, as the Miami Heat are going to host the Philadelphia 76ers. Taking a look at how both of these teams were able to make it here, they would end up finishing their season separated by only 2 wins, even though they're the 1-4 seed. So it's a lot closer than many people would really believe. Starting first with how the 1 seed Miami Heat were able to make it here. The Miami Heat were able to beat the 8 seed Atlanta Hawks after the Hawks won 2 play-in games. The Heat would go on to beat Atlanta for the first 2 games in Miami. They won Game 1 by 24. They would win Game 2 by 10. Game 3 would see the Hawks win their only game of the series off of some late-game heroics from Trae Young. But then Game 4 would be won by the Heat in Miami, as they won by 24 points. They would go on to win Game 5 by 3 points in order to win this game and really kind of just overload what the Heat really could really give them. And then while they won the series, their leading scorer was their elite small forward out of Marquette, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler would go on to average 30.5 points, 7.8 rebounds, just over 5 steals, and just under 3 steals a game, while playing 4 of the 5 games. Max Strus would average 14 points and just over a steal in 5 games. Tyler Hero, coming off the bench, would average 12 points and just over a steal. Bam Adebayo, one of the starters, would go on to average 12.5 points, 8 rebounds, and average a steal per game, as the Miami Heat would go on to advance to this round. And, of course, they are going to be facing off against a 4 seed Philadelphia 76ers team who really earn their way in. They would go on to win game 1 and 2 at home, beating the Raptors. They beat the Raptors by 20 in game 1, and then they won by 25 in game 2. They won game 3 in Toronto by 3 to take a 3-0 series lead. The Raptors would win game 4 and game 5 by 8 and 15 respectively, but then the Sixers would go on to win game 6 in Canada by 35 points. In the series, they would go on to be led by this season's scoring champ, Joel Embiid. Their elite starting center averaged 26 points, 11 rebounds as well in those 6 games that he played. Their starting point guard, Tyrese Maxey, averaged 21 points, just under 5 rebounds, and just under 5 assists in the 6 games that he played. Their elite starting shooting guard and former NBA MVP, James Harden, averaged a double-double as he averaged 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 10 assists, averaging over a steal and a block as well. Tobias Harris would be their 4th double-digit scorer as he averaged 17.8 points per game at age 29 in the 6 games that he played, being a very big part of helping the Sixers advance. And that is, of course, how the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be sitting here as they play against the Miami Heat. The first 2 games will be played in Miami in FTX Arena. Game 1 is set for tomorrow. Game 2 is set for the 4th, which is a Wednesday. Game 3 is going to be set in Philly on the 6th, which, of course, is supposed to be a Friday. And then Game 4 is set a week from today in Philly. That's going to be on TNT. And then, of course, last but not least, looking at the last NBA semifinal or a conference semifinal matchup that's going to be taking place, it's going to be the 1-4 matchup in the Western Conference as the regular season champs Phoenix Suns are going to host the Dallas Mavericks. After the Phoenix Suns finish with the best record in the NBA, the only team to win 60 regular season games this season, they went on to beat the 1 seed New Orleans Pelicans after the Pelicans won 2 play-in games to play them. The Suns would go on to win the first game of this series by 11 at home. They lost the second game in Phoenix to the Pelicans by 11. They went on to win game 3 in New Orleans by 3. They lost game 4 in New Orleans by 15. They would go on to beat the Pelicans in game 5 by 15 before they would go on to beat the Pelicans in New Orleans by 6 in game 6 to, of course, win the series. They would go on to be led in scoring by their elite starting point guard, Chris Paul, who would go on to average 22 points and 11 assists and just under 2 steals in the 6 games he played. Their former number 1 overall pick, DeAndre Ayton, would average 20.5 points per game and 10 rebounds in the 6 games he played. Their elite starting shooting guard, Devin Booker, averaged 23 points and 4 assists in 3 games out of the 6, as he missed a good chunk of it. But he was still one of 3 20-point per game scorers on this team. Mikal Bridges would average 17 points and a block and a half. Cameron Johnson out of UNC would be their 5th double-digit scorer as he averaged 11 points per game. That would be how the Phoenix Suns would be able to make it here. And looking at how their opponents would make it here, the Dallas Mavericks would end up beating the 5-seed Utah Jazz in 6 games. They lost game 1 at home to the Jazz as the Jazz won game 1 by 6. The Mavericks won game 2 in Dallas by 6 to even up the series. The Mavericks would win game 3 in Salt Lake City by 8 to take the series lead before the Jazz evened it up in game 4 with a 1-game win. Game 5 would see the Mavericks take control as they beat the Jazz by 25. Then they would go on to beat the Jazz by 2 in game 6 in order to make it into this round. And that is exactly how every single one of these teams would make it here. The Mavericks versus Suns game, the first couple games should be in Phoenix as game 1 is set for tomorrow. Game 2 is set for Wednesday. Game 3 is set for Friday. And then game 4 is set for a week from today, next Sunday. Games 3 and 4 should be in Dallas, as so far we have no idea if game 5 is going to be played yet. So that is how I'm going to preview these rounds, and I do want to thank the ESPN and NBA websites for giving me all the facts and figures. I want to thank everyone for listening in as we navigate through this world of sports one day at a time. And once we get through this round, of course, I'm going to preview the conference finals round. But of course, with that said, thanks once again for listening. I do hope all is well, and I will catch you with more of this as we move on through the season. Thanks for listening. To my piece, I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Peace out.